What is that striking thing about Ken that will make me think I want to look at his direction and possibly give him the nod?
Today happens to be the 1 week ceremony or celebration of the late Asantehemaa, Nana Kunadu Yadom. And it's happening today in Kumasi. So Honorable Kennedy Agyapong is also going, and of course those of us who identifies with the Asante lineage and Asante tribe, we are all mourning, and of course the entire nation at large is also mourning, and that explains even the reason why
you are in this. Okay, because for a moment I was thinking, hey, what's happening?
No, I'm not mourning within the context of having lost maybe a direct relation, but as an Akan or an Asante, we
Class 91.3 FM
join the mountain from the Mencha Palace. So it's the reason why I'm in black, and of course it's also important that we state it here. Yeah. Now to the substantive question. 2028 is going to be interesting. The dynamics is going to be quite different.
How? Why?
Obviously, you are looking at NDC presenting a fresh face and a new candidate, because this time around you realize that President Mahama is statute barred to contest again. So certainly this will be his last term. And you also look at it from the perspective that they've just had 4 years in office by 2028, and the tradition has always been about 8 years that every party comes into power and they spend 8 years. And so they are going to do everything possible to break the 4 so that they get the traditional 8 years before even other consequential conversations come in, whether they will break the 8 to 12 or whatever. The record that we set for ourselves, and unfortunately we couldn't break. But of course, as a party, NPP, we are also determined that 2028 we want to win power, and so you can then understand that 2028 is going to be a very heavy fight, and I use fight in a context. It's not going to be easy for us as a party, and so it is a more reason why at a crucial time like that in 2028 you need somebody that the people resonate with. And Ken has just 3 unique trademarks. You are looking at it from the perspective that he identifies more with the grassroots, and of course you agree.
The others don't.
He stands taller in terms of identification with the grassroots. You see, identification with the grassroots is not an event. It stands from a lifestyle, what you've lived your life for, the people you've always been advocating for, your commentaries, your posture, your body language, in terms of your political lifestyle, which people have benefited from your works. And of course, if you look at Ken from day one, has always been advocating that party people should be taken care of, the grassroots should be taken care of. The fact that he's always been speaking for the ordinary Ghanaian, the vulnerable, that makes him taller. It does not necessarily mean that other people may not have it. Yes, they are all fantastic candidates, referencing all the other people who also want to come. But in terms of a trademark that you can easily
Class 91.3 FM,
you can identify him with the grassroots. Of course, for instance, when you talk about economy, you may not necessarily identify economy with Ken. The first person that may come into your mind is maybe Dr. Baumia, because that is what he has projected for himself in terms of the public outlook. That's what the public knows him for. As to the outcome of such projection is also another question for us to discuss. When you talk about maybe Dr. Brian, he may be identified with something also quite different. You may say, oh, he's a security guy. People may think he has money. He's opening businesses, hotel, blah blah. That is it. So when it comes to Ken too, of course, when you mention, for instance, my former boss who are especially my daughter Duchum, the first thing that will come into your mind will be his prowess in education, right? Education transformation. But when you talk about Ken and the name Ken, it resonates with somebody who has always been fighting for the base, somebody who has always been fighting for the grassroots. And so I'm of the view, and of course, like many like-minded people, we believe that a strong connection with the grassroots is going to really amass the grassroots to support the party. And the grassroots obviously forms the base. You see, I've always maintained that the grassroots votes do not change. When the grassroots are for you, they are for you. Mostly, the votes that keeps changing has always been the middle class. And I mean, the good thing is that this time around, you have a lot of people. You have a lot of professionals, a lot of members of parliament, a lot of the middle class who are also around him. That is also going to draw the middle class votes. So yes, 2028 from that strength, as in being a grassroots man, and of course the fact that those people also identify him with job creation. If you look at the statistics, for instance, across all data from the World Bank, looking at statistics from the Ghana Statistical Service, for instance, if we look at the World Bank and its estimation, for instance, it projects that by 2030 you are looking at about 400 million jobs. That is 400 million job seekers. But unfortunately, those job seekers, the jobs that they may be looking for, will not be in existence. Just about 80 million jobs will be in existence. If you want to even narrow it to, let's say, the Ghanaian perspective, for instance, you look at, say, the Ghana Statistical Service. It says that if you take Ghanaians, 100 Ghanaians that are even working, 80% of them are underpaid. You are also looking at
Class 91.3 FM.
Higher unemployment rate, and even becomes quite intriguing when you are even looking at, for instance, graduate unemployment. One of the bane of this country has always been on unemployment, and even people who are also employed are also underpaid. So at a crucial time like this, where our major problem also as a country, especially a problem bothering the youth, is unemployment. I've read a lot of researches, I've read a lot of data which suggests that when a batch of national service people complete, it takes a minimum of 50 years. Sorry, most of these things you have to look at it from the budget perspective. How much allocation was made into that sector, or in terms of carrying out that promise. I mean, we may all have to interrogate it. If you look at the government's commitment to it vis-a-vis how it was promoted as a flagship policy, compare that to, for instance, a flagship policy like the free senior high school, where it was our trump card during 2016 general elections, and comparing this to the last one that we had, 2024. If you are just opposing the two, you will realize that it is not a promise that in terms of its implementation and its feasibility and its government's commitment, I don't see it being that very realistic. So the point I am making is that unemployment is going to still be a problem in 2028. I don't see so much from this government. I mean, look at even the inconsistency. On one side, you promise 24-hour economy to come and create jobs, but on the other side, the first thing that you did as a government when you came into power was to terminate appointments of people that have gotten employments lawfully and also gotten through the right processes to get employment. So
I mean, lawful can be relative, because in some context I've heard officials of the party say some of these people, they had question marks about how they found themselves in the places they work.
Employment is not an event, it's a process. I use the Ministry of Education where I worked, for instance. Financial clearance was secured around July. I guess interviews will have to be made, documents and academic certifications, CVs will have to be perused, they have to be reviewed, even letters have to be printed and awarded to beneficiaries or people that have been recruited. There are instances that originally, when even you are successfully recruited, it takes about a minimum of 6 months, sometimes even to 1 year before you get your staff ID. And remember, the staff ID is the prerequisite unique identification that controller uses to identify you as a staff before they even pay you. Mostly averagely you're looking about 6 months before even that comes in. But yes, all these guys, their appointments were terminated. So on all basis they say that in some cases there was no cases. You see, it will be irrational for anybody to say that when you lose an election on the 7th of December, quickly between 7th of December to 7th of January, you engineer a recruitment process and complete it. It will never happen.
You are suggesting that has never been the case in our space?
It won't even work in a space of 1 month. What are you going to do? Look at, even when we lost the election, people were demoralized, people were being attacked at their various offices, people couldn't even just go into their office.
You never heard stories about letters being backdated?
You see, backdated when? That's what I'm saying, that when did the process start? When did this process start? The fact that you come and meet an appointment has been made, and that, let's say, letters are on the 5th of August or 7th of August, does not necessarily suggest that the letters were backdated. Backdated to when? When did the process start? That for me is the most important thing. And of course, I mean, the fact that you lose an election does not mean that you cannot. You see, let me take it from this perspective. Before, as a government agency, you can recruit, right? You first of all have to get what we call financial clearance from Ministry of Finance. If you do not get a financial clearance, there is no basis for even going ahead to do the recruitment. I am suggesting to you on this platform that all the recruitments that were done then, every institution had financial clearance predating even the election day. Because if you didn't have financial clearance, on what basis will you proceed with the recruitment process for you who to come and pay? If it had been the case that the directive that came from the Chief of Staff office was that, all the recruitments or all the employment that were awarded, all of them that did not have financial clearance, at the end of the day, you are going to revoke those appointments, I would have sided with them, because I mean, it wouldn't make any reasonable sense to give employment letters to people that the state does not have the capacity in terms of the financial capacity to pay. But in this context, I am giving you an instance of an institution where I worked. If you move to other institutions, people had even worked for 3 years, 4 years,
and they were still asked to go. In the context of Ken being the leader of the country at some point, which is what you're leading, what is that thing that would make me think, whether I'm a delegate or when he goes past that process and he ends up leading the party going into elections in 2028, Ken is the man. When we are having a conversation about employment, he's going to come in and create those opportunities for whoever to be pretty much settled in the space in which they operate.
I think it's about the life that he's lived even at an individual level. It's all about job creation. His personal life at an individual level has always been about job creation. You see, I mean, we talk about ideas, we talk about vision, and of course, I mean, ideas alone cannot run a state. You need ideas, all right, but also you need implementation of those ideas. And if you look at Ken, everything about him, what he stood for, has always been about job creation and entrepreneurship. So for him, his vision is just about coming to transform this country through entrepreneurship. That is one of the greatest trademark that he's going to bring on board. And of course, you can verify from the things he's done in the past that single-handedly one individual has created about 7,000 jobs throughout his lifetime for the ordinary Ghanaian to benefit. And so it gives that credence to him that he can make that his trump card, because that has been what he has been doing, that has been what he stood for, all about job creation. So yes, I mean, it's not necessarily also about job creation, but also creating more entrepreneurs, because I mean, we agree, if you move to advanced countries, job creation is not only a reverse for the government. In truth and in all honesty, 80% of the jobs that has been created in advanced countries are not even owned by the government. They are owned by private individuals. So it's just about having that leader with a mindset to create more Kennedy Japons, having a leader with a mindset to create more Ibrahim Mohammed, to create more Jospons, to create more Brian Champons, so that at the end of the day, these individuals will have the capacity to build more institutions that will also drive the job creation agenda. Of course, I mean, Ken believe that there is a link between socio-economic transformation and agriculture. and there is a more reason why his first policy is benchmarked on driving over 1 million youth into agriculture. And of course, when I talk about agriculture, I'm talking about agriculture that is
Class 91.3 FM.
and of course, I mean agriculture to drive exports, so that we are also able to, in terms of the turnover, we are also able to reduce import and export. Of course, that will have a consequential impact on also our currency that we have always been, that is practical economics that we have always been crying over. So can also believe that there is also a strong correlation, a strong link between socio-economic transformation and tourism. And it's also one of the key things that he's also going to drive in his government. So he's looking at employment or job creation. I want to term it job creation. He's looking at agriculture, he's looking at tourism, and of course the job creation will be anchored around agriculture and tourism. And of course, one also key important thing that Ken will also be driving very mindfully will be giving true meaning to decentralization. You know, in Ghana, when you talk about, for instance, local government, what we have practically is not local government. What we rather have is what you may call local administration, because in terms of, even if you go to the district assemblies, properly so called, a lot of procurements, almost every procurement decision is made in Accra, and then they are just made to supervise. So that is not local government. But first of all, what Ken plans to do is to cause what you call a massive decentralization symbol by first of all relocating about 90% of the ministry that we have in Ghana to different parts of the regions. And we are of the view that that is also going to force expansion and development in those regions. Because for instance, I give you an example. If I work in the Ministry of Education, so that mostly comes to mind first. If I look at the Ministry of Education, for instance, we have about 29 different agencies under the ministry, and all the 29 different agencies are all located in Accra here with different offices here. So assuming, say, Ministry of Education is then relocated to, say, Central Region, I mean hypothetically, what essentially means is that the ministry and all its 29 agencies under them are all moving to Central Region. People are going to rent, people are going to build, people who may have to access the Ministry of Education will have to travel to Central Region, not necessarily Accra. They obviously will sleep in hotels, buy food. People, civil servants will live there, their children will live there. They'll be forced to get good schools for them. People will then build schools. Hospital expansion obviously will force the government to also construct better roads, and that itself will then stimulate a certain economy in the Central Region. Then you look at, say, agriculture. You take agriculture to the north. You may be looking at energy. Say you take energy to Western Region. You take tourism to Volta Region. And of course, I mean, that also essentially means
Class 91.3 FM
traveling to Accra. But instead of focusing entirely or wholly on Accra, this time around you have people always moving to Ashanti Region, others moving to the if you need something, for instance, from the Ministry of Agriculture, this time around you'll be compelled to go to the north. Is that not the case? If you are compelled to go to the north, chances are that when you are coming, you buy smoke. Is that not the case? If you buy smoke, certainly you've also provided jobs for other people in the north. So Ken's approach of governance is going to be a common sense approach to solving the problems that we have as a country. And I've always maintained that our problems that we have as a country does not need rocket science mindset to solve it. Our problems are systemic. If you want to list them, if you ask anybody to list the problems in Ghana, you realize that these problems has always been the problems that was inherited by Nkrumah, inherited by Buzia and Co, Champo and Co, right, even to the Fourth Republic. It was the same problem. Even if you look at election analysis and how people lost elections, or governments or parties lost elections in Ghana, it was all based on economy, job creation, corruption, bad rules, health, infrastructure, electricity or power. These are the problems that we have as a country. So our point is that our problems just requires common sense approach. For instance, you talk about the job creation that I spoke about. We have vast lands, right? Look at the Casapreco alone. Casapreco alone imports about $2 billion dollars of ethanol every year. Yeah, one company. That's for his Ghanaian market. You are not even looking at the rest of the African continent. But the Ghanaian market alone, he imports about $2 billion. That's money that the whole country goes for from IMF. And the ethanol is just produced from cassava, basic cassava. And cassava alone can give you about 33 byproducts. Cassava alone, if you want to look at the processing chain, cassava alone can give you 33 end products or byproducts. So if you have a president whose mindset is about practical approach to solving problems, that he believes that we have to produce almost everything here, add value to it, invest so much in agriculture. If, for instance, we even become a net exporter of ethanol alone, not even talking about the other products like starch and whatever, ethanol alone, if as a country we want to even invest in ethanol alone and say, look at the land, if we are going to Volta region, we want to take advantage of it, the lands in the north,
Class 91.3
and we are focusing that ethanol alone, because if Casapreco alone can import just $2 billion, it presupposes that if, for instance, we are making a production for just 10 people in the class or category of Casapreco across the world, that's about $20 billion, and exporting this alone, this country is getting about $20 billion.
These look like very fine conversations that I'm sure if he navigates his way past the internal contest, he's going to be pushing a lot strongly. He has to go past over 200,000 people first, and as to whether these policies would sit well with them for them to give him the nod. I see that you've been doing a lot of traveling. When you go and you are propounding these to them, how have they been received?
Yeah, so I think it stems from our last performance as a party relative to the general elections, and from the what we are picking on the grounds, especially from the delegates, you realize that they need a change, because we had an election that I'm even coming from leaving the parliamentary level. Interestingly, for instance, I give you some statistics. Do you know that the last election that we had, in 4 regions, MPP do not even have a parliamentary rep?
Yes.
And these 4 regions, we are looking
Upper
at
East, Upper West.
Yes. Volta Uti.
Yeah.
Yes. And
you only have one in Bono.
Yeah,
you only have one in Savannah.
Yes. The number of seats in these 4 regions alone is 53. And in these 53, out of these 53 seats, the MPP has 0. Then you look at also other 5 regions. We are looking at Western North. We are looking at Bono. We are looking at Ahafo and Bono East, and Western North, Bono, Ahafo, Bono East, and Savannah. These are also other 5 regions. Do you know that out of these other 5 regions, there are 45 parliamentary seats? MPP has only 5 of them. So the cumulative effect is that out of 98 parliamentary seats from 9 regions, the NPP has just 5, and the NDC has 93.
Is it not on the back of the performance of the party in office at the time?
Not necessarily. You see how elections are conducted in this country. When people are coming out, they come out to vote for both the presidential candidate and also the parliamentary candidate. And so when people have doubts or they have reason not even come and vote for the presidential candidate himself, certainly also going to affect the parliamentary candidate. But I want to answer your question from this perspective. It is not in dispute, right, that the party at some point also became quite less attractive, especially post the COVID era. Nobody disputes that.
Class 91.3
At the end
FM.
of the day, people are not going to come out to vote for you as it used to be. But the level of decline, the level of drop, cannot necessarily only be a burden on the parties alone. In 2008, if you recall, that was when we had global economic recession. Companies in America was hit greatly, and developing economies like ours was also hit greatly. If you recall, in 2008, almost every incumbent all over the world lost, where in America companies were declaring bankruptcy. Yes, though, President Akufo-Addo's popularity and his dominance alone, then as candidate Akufo-Addo was able to push the party to the runoff, to the extent that we even won the first round election and led with about 100,000 votes, only for us to lose to President Mills during the runoff with about 23,000 votes when time decided. So also presupposes that the candidate counts and the candidate matter, and the performance of the candidate can also change a lot of narrative. I give you a similar example. For instance, in Asen, where Agyapong had always contested and won the seat since 1996, served as a member of parliament for 26 years. When Kennedy decided not to run for the parliamentary seat, obviously because he had to contest for the presidential primary,
you lost the seat to Mijima.
We lost the seat. And I mean, one may want to do some voter behavior and voter analysis. You would then come to the conclusion that originally the seat was not an MPP seat. The first time it was won by the NDC, but when Kennedy came, he was able to sustain the seat until he left. Again, it comes to one very conclusion, that the performance of the candidate, the popularity of the candidate was what was propelling the party, and it presupposes also that the people's allegiance was to the candidate and not necessarily to the party.
But the dynamics of Asin may be completely different from the dynamics in, let's say, where you come from.
Yeah, essentially, that's why we are discussing Asin. That in the case of Asin, you can then conclude that the people were voting for Kennedy Agyapong as an individual, as a person, not necessarily the party. So the party's fortune was primarily tied with the Kennedy Agyapong's brand and his prominence and his popularity. It's the same thing that we witnessed in 2008. Akufo-Addo had not been marketed a lot. He served in ministries that were almost discreet. For instance, if you are a minister,
Foreign Affairs Minister,
until Ablagba came in with his populism, and you will not even hear mostly from ministers who serve at the Foreign Affairs, also at Attorney General. So these were not loud ministry that you have even the opportunity to market yourself, right?
Last night to 1.3 FM
alone was able to propel the party to a runoff, to the extent that
was he not already a popular person before he assumed those positions?
I mean certainly, but you see, your popularity should also be benchmarked on the opportunity that you have to campaign. If it is all about popularity, then candidates.
Danado had been the leading figure of the party for years, even before the NPP got into power in 2000.
I am coming within the context of political popularity relative to campaign. You need a certain platform, right? Work, show visibility in terms of where you find yourself to also make a case. I mean, if it is about popularity, then President Mahama was known, right? He has always been communication minister. He has always been around. Then probably he should have even campaigned even in the first place. Almost everybody that had contested had been known one or the other. Dr. Bawumia is known, but you see, as soon as you bring in the argument of popularity, then you also have to do the comparison test, right? I mean, in the case of, for instance, Dr. Bawumia, for instance, he has been around for the past 16 years as a vice president, right? For the past 8 years. You cannot compare the visibility that a vice president will have in 8 years to a minister in 8 years. It will never be the same. You cannot, just like,
and in this case, he was given a lot more opportunity.
Exactly, because as a vice president, he
was quite visible, to be honest.
Exactly. So when I talk about popularity, it is in terms of visibility relative to the election time or the election,
and possibly to performance as well.
Exactly. And I mean, that is where I am bringing the conversation to. I mean, the whole thing will arrive at performance, but the point I'm trying to make is that if you compare these two personalities, right, and the votes that they had, you then come to the conclusion that yes, the party matters, but at every point also the candidate's performance and the candidate's popularity can also be a tool or a trump card to also traject the party into victory. And
what would you then say that, for example, leading into the election in 2016, one of the positive virtues of Dr. Bawumia, because I mean, whether we like it or not, it's between him and your candidate. One of the positive virtues of him at the time was that in the north, the party appeared to be struggling, and it was because of his work and whatever effort he put in that propelled the party getting a certain number of votes and a certain number of seats in the northern region at the time, culminating in the party's victory in the election 2016.
No, you see, in 2016, it was not really about Dr. Bawumia. The reason why I'm making a case.
You don't even want to give him a little credit for the party's effort in 2016.
To be fair to him, he also campaigned like many other party people. But you see, his bigger test, I'm going to compare.
Class 91.3 FM.
His bigger test rather came in 2024 when he himself, if it was about his popularity and the work that he did, this time around in 2016, he had not proven himself with any track record prior to 2016. But in 2024, he had the opportunity to serve as a vice president 8 years. And so, if for any other reason, that should have been a basis where he had more visibility, he has a track record to compare with. Is that not the case? But yes, still, interestingly, in 2016, President Akufo-Addo won. We had, some number of seats, even in Upper West, if I recall. Even in Upper
Anthony
West,
Kabo won there.
Yes, we won almost, I think, 5 or so out of the 6s. And
former Interior Minister won his seat there as well. We won, I think, in Sisala as a party.
Yeah. But interestingly, when Dr. Bawumia himself contested in 2024, the number of votes that even President Akufo-Addo had in 2020, it was reduced by 16.1%. And ordinarily, you would have expected that Dr. Bawumia, coming from the northern part of the country, would have engineered some support for him. But interestingly, compared to the votes that President Akufo-Addo had in 2020, Dr. Bawumia's votes rather reduced by 16.1% in the northern parts of the country. So, if anybody want to suggest to me that, well, in 2016 it was his popularity and his influence that was rather able to help the MPP get more votes in the northern regions, in particular, it cannot be the case, because when he himself had the opportunity to represent the party in the capacity as a flag bearer, this time not deputizing his boss, because in the 2016 election his boss face was there, he rather reduced his boss vote from the northern part of the
argument that was made in line with what you have just said is that he suffered from the baggage of his boss.
But why you think in 2008 Akufo-Addo never also had some baggage from President Akufo? That's why I give you the context, a broader context about the way the country was hit, the African continent, all over the world were hit with economic global recession. And you see, I don't think it would be disingenuous for anybody to suggest that almost everything that President Akufo-Addo did was bad. President Akufo-Addo's governance started suffering some turbulence the post-COVID period, and we admit, we do not shy away, we do not run away from the fact that from 2022 the economy was hit badly, things were hard. But I'm just making a comparison between the last 2 years and also what we witnessed between 2007 and 2008, where the whole world was also hit with it. It was the same economic recession. It was the same economic recession that also President Akufo left at. Even when President Akufo was leaving, people were calling him the worst president we've ever had. And he said, time will judge, posterity will judge us. So nobody is saying that factors may not have affected, economic factors may not have affected Dr. Bawumia. But you see, the point is that economic factors affecting him. As when we came into power, the dollar was 1:4, right? We left it 1:17. Is that not the case? Around 1:17.
It kept fluctuating, but it got to 17 at the point.
70 years before we left power. NDC has brought it to 1:10. Assuming without admitting that NDC is even needs to maintain it to 1:10. That's about 7 cities different, right? What will be our campaign message if we bring Dr. Bawumia again for the next election in 2028? What is going to be his trump card, especially when he campaigned against the backdrop of economy and the fact that his specialization is with the economy? He may not necessarily have engineered our defeat, but sometimes you may even be a victim of circumstance. And within the supreme interest of the general well-being of the party and our common goal, sometimes it's better for even that individual who takes the final and ultimate responsibility to step aside. It cannot be said that we separate President Akufo-Addo from Vice President Bawumia. When you had the opportunity to serve as a vice president for 8 years, if every good thing happened, you are not part. You are part of it. But when the economic recession, or the economy was struck with a recession, then you said that, it was a mess of your boss. In the space of 8 years, It can be.
Those who argue on his behalf say that the things that made the government successful were things that he was asked to lead. And that's why maybe those things worked. But those things that he wasn't asked to lead, unfortunately, he didn't go right.
He was also the leader of the economic management team.
Ahead of the election, the party argued that it was only an advisory team. It was still up to the president to decide.
You see, for me, that is where I find problem with this team. You see, the whole point about beauty of leadership is to also own up to responsibilities and apologize when they need be. Dr. Bawumia did not engineer COVID. The consequential impact of COVID on our country was not engineered by him. But there comes a time where you have to step out and say that, well, the circumstances where we find ourselves was occasioned by A, B, C, D. The measures that have been taken, even though uncomfortable and inconvenient, are measures that is necessary. We take responsibility as leadership, but I assure you that we'll move to go through. Remember Obama when he had to give the message of hope in 2008.
Last night to 1.3 FM.
First before you take a message, you give a message of hope. But when leadership acts as though every good thing, they engineered it. But where things got worse or went south, you are not part. It doesn't demonstrate a trademark of a good leader. That is not how leadership is about. Leadership is not about selections of what you want to own up, whether good or bad. You need to demonstrate leadership and look into the people's face that I take responsibility for A, I take responsibility for B, I take responsibility for C, but then give a superior assurance that ultimately we shall overcome. On what basis will you serve with your boss in the capacity as a vice president for 8 good years and say that every bad thing that happened in the governance is your boss but not you? I mean, how do you convince Ghanaians? But you see, that verdict has been rejected by Ghanaians during the last elections. That verdict has been rejected by Ghanaians, where they treated Dr. Bawumia as part of President Akufo-Addo. And I don't even want to subscribe to that argument. Who said President Akufo-Addo performed badly? It's a narrative that has been drummed so many times, maybe by the Bawumia's campaign team, in an attempt to whitewash him and make him maybe look different for maybe the contest ahead in terms of the primaries and the subsequent general election if he had the opportunity. But at the end of the day, let's go into the manifesto promise that President Akufo-Addo made. The last 8 years, which of them did he not touch on, and which of them did he not fulfill, or which of them did he not perform? It was only the last 2 years that the economy shrank. And of course, I mean, that one he had even prophesied and predicted it earlier in his first speech during the COVID address, when he said we know how to bring back the economy, but we do not know how to bring back human lives. It was an admission and a prophecy that the economy could collapse, because that was a reality on the ground, that the COVID was going to hit us so badly, and the decisions that were being taken. I mean, at the Ministry of Education, that's where I work. We at GES, for instance, we have about 350,000 workers that stayed home for about a year. The teachers and non-teaching staff, yesterday they were paid. Where do you think the money was coming from? People were giving free water, people were giving free electricity.
Although we still paid back
in a contest. But I mean, the time value of money also counts. I'm not an economic person, but of course, I mean, at that time it was still a cost to the state. At that time, it was still a cost to the state, and it wasn't in the normal course of things. Because if that was the case, then probably even at that time, it shouldn't have also been free in the first place. MBSSI, the support that were given to businesses to
last night to 1.3 FM
allows productivity almost grounded to zero. I mean, those were the times that President Akufo-Addo's popularity dropped a bit. And of course, I also admit that in terms of his posturing generally to Ghanaians at some point was also something that maybe we could have had a different posturing. Commanding chiefs to get up and other things. You know, sometimes you also have to be sensitive to the mood of the nation and the culture of the people, which I felt, I mean, sometimes as a leader, there are good moments, there are also bad moments, and maybe we could have done well on that. But the whole narrative as though President Akufo-Addo did not perform, and for that matter, Dr. Bawumia was punished for President Akufo-Addo's mess. I do not.
For you, it's either here or
no,
there.
I do.
This look like enough missiles that you can throw at the 215,000 plus people to, if you like, pretty much get a decision in your favor. But every now and then we wake up to, you know, leading members of your party, people who have been in and around the MPP for as long as I can remember, still throwing their weight behind Dr. Bawumia going into the election next year. What is it that you are probably not telling them, or you're probably not connecting to them to make them say that, look, we went into this election, the figures do not lie, have a look at my candidates?
No, you see, their position has been one, and of course they've been advancing one argument, and the argument has been that Dr. Bawumia deserves a second chance, and they argue from the history of the party, except to say that even when they are giving the history of the party, they don't give in absolute terms. You see, the argument has always been that President Akufo-Addo was given opportunity 3 times to run before he became a president. President Kufuor was also given opportunity to run on 2 occasions, and so by virtue of that, some way somehow Vice President Dr. Bawumia also deserves a second chance. But you see, what they also fail to understand is that when you talk about a second chance, it's not just a reward for showing up in MPP.
You need to earn it.
You need to earn it. And in MPP, the second chance, people that were given a second chance were always contingent on their performance.
They showed promise.
Yes, you showed promise. I give you an instance. If you look at Professor Dubois, for instance, he contested in 1992. In 1992, that was a time that we were transitioning from the military era to the Republican state, and then practicing democracy properly, so-called. At the time when we have an election, it was not really an open and free and fair election, because we were having those were the times that we were using opaque ballot boxes to, and I mean, you picture it. At the time, he was contesting the almighty Rollins, who had been in the space for some time, had dominance, had control almost all over everything. But in just in such a hostile electoral process, he was still able to pull 30.29%. And you see, one thing is that the difference between himself and President Rollins was about 1.1 million votes. That is significant for you to note. The difference is very key. 1.1 million votes. Then we went into 96. The party people felt that despite the hostile environment that you contested in this election, we still believe that you did not perform well. So they took President Kufuor. Then President Kufuor came,
and you went into an alliance with the PCP.
Yeah. So most important is that this time around, in the history of the MPP, just based on performance, Professor Dubois was dropped. Right? President Kufuor came in 1996, contested President Rollins again, won with had about 2.83 million votes. That is an appreciation of votes, and then brought it to percentage to 39.67%. And the vote difference again was about 1.2 million between him and President Rollins.
So in 4 years, it had upgraded to almost 10%.
Yes, it's almost 10%. Then fast forward is 2008. President Akufo-Addo then also took it to around 49.13%. And even with him, he won in the first round. You understand? But you see, from President Akufo-Addo also taking it from, so he started with the Dubois 30, 39 to 49. So all of them almost about 10% increment. Then it came to 2024. In 2024, Dr. Bawumia rather brought Akufo-Addo's 49% in his first time to 41.61%. And if you want to look at the nominal values in percentage, the nominal values that's supposed in the percentage terms, he dropped President Akufo-Addo's votes, especially even in the 2020 votes. He dropped the votes, that's about 6.7 to 4.65 million votes. That's about 31% decline then nationwide. And if we also want to compare even the northern part, he dropped it about 16.1%, and also the southern part, he dropped President Akufo-Addo's 2020 votes to about 33%. But let's even focus on their first attempts. In their first attempt, President Dubois had 30.9%. President Kufuor's first attempt then increased to 39%, right? In the President Akufo-Addo's first attempt increased to 49%. So in our trend analysis, you realize that in MPP we have always been going higher, despite the circumstances there. So it's only Dr. Bawumia that dropped our votes by almost 9 to 10%. So which also presupposes that in terms of the performance, and of course judging by the history of the party, we cannot make a case for him that in his case, well, he deserves a second chance. But of course, I mean, those people that has been following him borrows only the examples of President
Class 91.3 FM.
Kufuor. But they forget that there has also been a history where in MPP those who did not perform were also not given a second chance. So I think it is left for us to then explain to the delegates in terms of the history of the MPP what really pertains in the history of the MPP. That in MPP, giving second chances is contingent on always performances and not necessarily by demonstrating some form of weakness as a candidate. And I'm sure that's what we've witnessed in the case of Dr. Bawumia. So yes, his candidacy mattered. His candidacy really also affected the party. Of course, he cannot take the entire blame, but I mean, you are also not able to decouple him from President Akufo-Addo, because I mean, let's be very fair to ourselves. Which other candidate or which other vice president had more visibility and had more opportunity to work and manage affairs in government as Dr. Bawumia? But if you look at the opportunity that he had, serving for the past 16 years, having for the past 15 years serving as the leader of the party, and the performance that he's pulled. Now, just opposing to Professor Dubois, where he pulled about 1.2 million votes. Then John Kufuor's first time pulling about 2.8 million votes. John Kufuor's second time increasing to 3.6 million votes. John Kufuor's third time, where he won, third time, that is from 2004, the 2004 election, where he also increased to 4.5 million votes. President Akufo-Addo first time 4.5 million. President Akufo-Addo second time 5.2 million, and his President Akufo-Addo's the third time, which was in 2020, 5.8 million. And so President Akufo-Addo's fourth time was the 2020, increasing to 6.7. You recall President Akufo-Addo contested on 3 occasions before he won.
Yes. 2012, 2020,
yes.
2024.
So I give you the trend again, at least for emphasis. In Professor Dubois, his first time he pulled 1.2 million. Then John Kufuor increased it to 2.8 million his first time. His first time in 1996. Then John Kufuor again in 2000 increased it to 3.6 million in the year 2000. John Kufuor again in the year 2004 increased it to 4.5 million. Then Akufo-Addo came in 2008. If you recall, the 2000 where he won even the first round against Professor Mills.
Yes,
with 4.5 million. But of course, I mean, he lost at the runoff, so he
couldn't get the requisite 50 plus one.
So, but he has demonstrated the track record that indeed he was promising, because he also maintained President Kufuor's previous percentage. Then
Dr. Bawumia may be promising in 2028. So
I'm coming. I'm coming. Let me land here. Then in 20
Class 91.3 FM
came with 4.5 million. Again, he couldn't win, but that is also 5.2 million. But that is also a significant leap from the 4.5 million he previously had. So there's no basis of dropping him. Then again, President Akufo-Addo, 5.8 million. He won in 2016, 5.8 million. In 2020, he took it to 6.7 million. Then Dr. Bawumia then dropped from 6.7 million to 4.6 million. That's about 31%, 31.3% drop. So in this case, and especially with the background I gave you about our parliamentary performances, where out of 98 seats in 9 regions, the party only has 5 representations. You cannot look at this data and say that, I mean, such a leadership.
And that will take me back to the same question I asked again. You cannot look at this data and say we go with the same gentleman. But these same people who have an opportunity to vote, not everybody is a delegate from your party who will be voting before Ken gets onto the ballot. The same people appear to be backing that same candidate. In fact, a greater number of the people who may end up voting come 31st January are people who voted for Dr. Bawumia a little over 2 years ago. You're not worried about that?
No, but I mean, we can't be worried, because you see, I keep saying the elections are not events, they are processes. One process leads to the other. And of course, I mean, they say there is only a fool who doesn't change his mind. When they presented Dr. Bawumia, they've seen the outcome, that Ghanaians have rejected him. So looking at the
but they still appear to be supporting him. They are at his events. They are on radio. They are on TV. They are backing him everywhere.
You see, you have to separate the few bourgeoisies from the majority of the voters.
The bourgeois are influential. You know that.
I agree 100%. But you see, most important thing is that the sovereignty does not reside necessarily in the bourgeoisie.
That's a fair point.
The sovereignty resides in over 200,000 police station executives down there, and they have seen the state of the party. They are aware of how in the previous election the same bourgeoisie coerced them into one direction, and they are aware of the outcome. And this time around, if you look at their body language, the comments they are making, you realize that they are determined to make a change. Change is not a change until you change. And I'm not sure they are happy about this outcome. This data that I gave you, they are all aware of it. How this time around, since 1992 till now, we have been having an upward trend, only to have a downward trend this time around. They have come to the conclusion that yes, the bourgeoisie may have their say, but at
Class 91.3 FM.
It is a more reason why we are going to still appeal to them. I mean, we the Christians, the Bible has been clear that the heart of the king is in the hands of the Lord, and wherever he lies, like the river, is where he turneth it. So we are just going to once again go to them.
So we should have been paying attention to the battle for endorsements.
But those ones are engineered. We call it astroturfing and cosmetic showmanship in politics.
Really?
Yes, we call it political astroturfing. Let me give you an instance. Recall the last time Dr. Bamia's team paraded that they have about 67 MPs. But in real sense, you are a journalist, and I'm sure you have been interrogating or asking all the critical and deep questions. Look at the evidence that they brought to support the 67. There were just about 26 of them.
So the videos do not lie.
No, yes, the videos do not lie. And interestingly, now the MPs are not even going for his meetings again, because you don't invite MPs in under the pretext of having discussions with them, only for your guys to then record them and put it out there and create an impression as though they
belong to your camp.
Belongs to your camp. When that happens, it breaks trust and it breaks commitment. Subsequently, was about 230 MMDCs that were allegedly they said were declared their support for Dr. Bawumia. Again, it also came out that was also a hoax. It wasn't true. If you recall, subsequently some of the MMDCs came out to organize a press conference and speak to the public that no, that was not the case. They've not endorsed anyone. And recently I also heard about the 490 youth organizer, and clearly it appears they are so much interested in always putting out numbers. Maybe the only data and numbers they don't like is on the performance.
They were here. They said 490 out of 550 something.
And you believe it? I mean, if they wanted to be truthful, they would have put the 490 there. You see, it is not in dispute that they organize some youth organizers. You see, politics is a game of strategy. Recall, we did the same thing in 2024. Ghanaians were warning us that the grounds are not good. We are not happy. Things are bad. Listen to us. Listen to our plight. Here our plight. But it was the same strategy. Passing people to events, to rallies, dancing to Kim Palute's song. And what happened? At the end of the day, we declined our votes from 6.7 million to 4.6 million. That's about 31% decline. So it's about strategy that people want to the candidates want to employ. For instance, if you look at Agyapong, for instance, initially youth organizer had proposed to go and pick his nomination for him. Women organizer had proposed to go and pick his nomination for him. Ordinary Ghanaians had proposed to pick his nomination for him. But we felt that one have to be sensitive to the mood of the nation. Recall the recent tragic events.
Class 91.3 FM.
And of course, the fact that as a party, we are in opposition. We also need to do things modestly. We all resolved that the senior members of the party, which is about numbering about 20 of the MPs, go and pick the form for us. So that is our approach. But people also felt that they have to get some few youth organizers, about 40 of them, organize other party faithfuls, even bar students, and create an impression that they are winning. And you should understand them, especially if you
think they are acting desperately.
No, they are just trying to augment the mass defection that has hit their camp. Recall initially Dr. Brian, for instance, was a key member of the Bawumia's team. Today he's contesting him. my old boss and former boss, Dr. Duchum, was a key member to the extent that he was even tipped for vice. Today
because your team argued in the past that they were all whipped in line.
Yeah, but today he's contesting. That for me is the most important thing. Engineer Kwabena Agyapong at some point managed Dr. Baumia's campaign. Today he's also contesting him, and I mean a number of them, all these MPs, MMDCs, members of parliament in our camp lately, they were not in our camp. So if you are a camp and you've been hit with this high level of defection, I mean, certainly you have to act up to
find ways.
Yeah,
because I'm running out of time. So two quick things. I'm sure we'll have the opportunity of getting you here maybe a few more times before our election day next year. Two quick things. One, I see that in which is not surprising in the campaign period, a fair bit of mud is also being thrown about your candidates, things he said in the past. The videos have started springing up every now and then. Are you worried about this?
No. The reason is that, first of all, let me say that Ken is not a saint. Ken, like any other human being, has his strength and he has his shortcomings. There are some comments that even as at now we admit that we cannot defend, and those ones we apologize accordingly. Like any reasonable human being, you need to own up to responsibilities and things that you've said, whether good or bad, and within the context that it was said, you also have to be minded. If a borders people, you have to do the honorable thing. So there's some of the things that we admit that were a bit harsh and were in excess. We'll not sit here and pretend, but there are about 99% of them that you cannot take them out of context. About 99% of them were mostly things that were done. For instance, most of them were in defense of the party, and you realize that few of them, they will just take some few clip, a minute or two clip, just to spin and create a different impression. I'll give you one example. Mr. Osafumaa,
Class 91.3 FM.
Mr. Gabi Shedako and some few party faithfuls had met in Gabi's house in Koforidua Eastern region. They were addressing party faithfuls, and then one of them recorded some of the part. Obviously, it was party faithful, so he took a party faithful to record
what Mr. Osafumaa said.
Yes, what he said. And then the first time we heard it being played was on Accra FM, one of your sister stations. So I mean, Ken was surprised that which reasonable person will record an internal meeting and put it out there. I mean, it may probably take only a foolish person to do this, and this recording almost generated a tiff between the Asantes and the Achims, to the extent that leadership had to intervene, go to Menchia and explain themselves. In that context, if you say whoever did it was a fool, what has he done? So context is also always very important. Until you situate most of the things people believe he said in the right context, you may be discussing things in a pretext which may also be unfair to him. But like I indicated, outside the 99% of them that I feel that most of them are justifiable, and the context should explain the basis upon which those statements were made. Let's admit 1% he went overboard, he went in excess. He's a human being. Those ones who accept those shortcomings, and of course we work to improve ourselves, just like all of us. But the character traits that he has, as bold, as fearless, as a disciplined person, as somebody who can challenge the status quo, we should also not push him so much to the extent that he may have to abandon them. We will need them for the development of this country. And that's why the last time I insisted that let Ken be Ken. Let he be who he is in that aura and in that positive light, so that we'll be able to explore those strengths of him rather than focusing on the few weaknesses.
Fair point.
To be able to develop our
Because finally, have you thought of losing?
Elections have two outcomes. Is either you win or you lose. Ultimately, we are hoping to win. We will continue to engage the kingmakers. The kingmakers.
If you lose, you accept fairly?
Why not? I mean, elections have two outcomes, but with this current election, I do not think we'll lose. I'll be very surprised if we lose, because Ken's loss will be a soft way of saying that the party don't want to come to power in 2028 or even 2032. Do you know the reason? It took President Mahama about 8 years to come back and cancel the 1 million votes difference that he had between himself and President Akufo-Addo, right? So if
Class 91.3 FM.
to offset the 1 million votes,
then it will take a lot more to offset
it should be taking
1.67
about
million votes.
15 to 16 years to offset 1.7 million.
And you can't be in opposition for
can't
that
be in
long.
opposition for long. So
Kwesi, I hope to get to you again. Unfortunately,